All right, for assignment 4, we're going to do the parts, and for assignment 5, we'll introduce the assembly for these parts. So there's a couple ways to approach this. First, we're going to do these parts individually, and I like to go through the process of save as copy, save as, and open, so that I don't have to redraw each of these each time. I mean, they're similar enough that we start off with a square with a hole in it, and then we have kind of the pattern, and then we have 3, and the pins, and let's see if we get over a little more, the block, and finally the big plate with these different sizes. So this part, let's go back, and these 3 lend themselves to configurations, and configuration would be, rather than having 4, 5, 10 separate parts, if you think about going to a hardware store and looking through all of the hex head screws from 440 all the way up to 1 inch, and lengths of 1/4 inch to 4 inches long by 1/4 inch increments. Talking hundreds of individual files and components if we had to manage that. So when we do the whole wizard, and by extension of the whole wizard, go into the toolbox and use that database, we're really looking at those configurations to take advantage of this geometry. So we're going to start with a square, and I'm going to just, and this is in metric, so new part millimeter. And I want to extend. I've done this project before. I do want to extend this out a little bit more into the configurations, and maybe on the optional side we'll do a little bit more in it. And I'm just noticing that, okay, I wanted to try that. I noticed that my command manager was taking up quite a bit of room from a previous demo that I did, and so if we customize, I went from the medium size down to the smaller size, still showing the text. And if we need the real estate, just again be aware that I can collapse it, but once I've collapsed it, now I can push pin it to get it to stay. The other thing that I would just note real quick, and few side notes if it's something you want to start trying. When I've collapsed the command manager, I've shifted over to the S key. And the S key on the keyboard takes me into this group, and there's most of what I need here. I would like to see maybe the sketch, but I can still get into a sketch from this front. And then if I go to the S key, I'm going to see my the same thing on the keyboard. All right, but we're going to stay with the command manager. At a beginning level, you want all of these in front of you, the tooltips popping up, the shortcut keys or the hotkeys on the keyboard for L, and being able to navigate and learn these symbols and the things that go with them is a pretty big benefit right now. All right, so I'm going to go with a corner rectangle, a little bit bigger. And I also know that even though this is going to start off at 30 by 30, I'm going to be adding geometry to it. So I don't necessarily want to make this square. The other thing I would have to do is decide, do I want to include the hole in the sketch and try to drive this with a linear pattern, or do I want a feature pattern so that eventually I can just take advantage of my save as and open, and then eventually build this into a configurable item for the plates or the spacers? We'll come up with a common name, naming convention to work from. All right, so this is 10 millimeters thick. I'm thinking that I want this to be a separate feature so I can manage suppression states, I can do other things. So that is where design intent comes in. Even though I could, my future decisions say that it's going to be better if I go ahead and extrude this, and I don't particularly care which way. So 10 millimeter. We open up the next sketch, and because this has the potential to shift, let's see. Oh, I'm in the sketch already, so I jumped and did something automatically there, or my fingers were ahead of my mouth. So we're going to draw the circle and then the smart dimension for 10 millimeters, and we're 15 millimeters. I'm going to choose the same datum, even though the print kind of takes it off of the other sides. I'm going to choose those same datums so that I'm not ending up potentially chasing these numbers. Notice again that I'm picking the perimeters, not the centers. And that is two reasons. I want the biggest target because the point is going to be a little bit harder to capture, but the other thing is that if I need a min-max condition, I'm not going to get it with the center point. And maybe I only use the min-max. So if I go to the leaders and I come down here to my in condition or my arc conditions, min-max, if I go to the center point, I do not have to have those. I have to do the math. So if I came up with a number that was 10 millimeters from this edge to here and 10 millimeter to the side, I would still have to do the math, and 15 minus 5 is 10, and I would end up with the 10 millimeters. On the other side of that, if I do a min and I change this diameter, it would grow away from it, and rather than the center staying in the same position and my diameter. I don't know if that makes any sense or not, but I could keep this distance at 10 millimeters and have the circle shift rather than the center point stay the same and the diameter shift. So we're going to extrude cut through. And so you have all of these logical operators that you're dealing with, and you can make it as simple or as complex. For beginning and starting out, keep it simple. I want this geometry, and this is going to be a spacer. We could stay with the part numbers. I think they're all going to be spacer plates or spacers. So we have to set up our file structure. So if I did new, I want to do a save as. And this is going to take me to my working folder. So I'm going to create a new folder for assignments. Well, it's basically going to be assignments up through the assembly and the drawing. So I'm just going to call it assembly. And I can always change it later, but because it's kind of following that file structure, I would have to repick. So if I go spacer plate, and that'll keep my start. Well, let's see. So this is the 30 by 30. So maybe I build that into the name. I don't know. Okay, so we'll go 30 by 30 on this one. And also, I'm getting ready to hit save, and it was, oh yeah, do I want to save as copy and continue or save as copy and open? All right, so if I save as copy and open, well, this is the first one. I'm ahead of myself. So let's just save as, and we'll do the next one immediately. I want to save as, and now I can do the save as copy and open. So save as copy would create a new file, and then I would still be working on this one, and could open the other one later, whereas save as copy and open says I'm pretty much done with this one, and this one should now be 30 by 60, and it will be the open file. Sometimes it'll ask, do I want to keep this one open or do I want to close the original document? To avoid confusion here, I'm going to close the original document. And my screen is a little bit light here, so maybe I will hit the push pin so that will expand out. There we go. And so now I can double check in my title bar up here, the spacer 30 by 60 is what I'm dealing with. All right, so this again starts my logical progression of I want to change a dimension 60, and we'll rebuild that so that it updates. Again, I have the rebuild in the modify. I can't ever remember to hit it when I'm in there, so it just kind of comes with the territory. I could draw the second circle, but if I take this into a pattern, and we come back over here and we said that we're going to have a 30 by 60 with 2 holes, and then a 90. Was there 120 with 4 holes? Well, there was the 4 by 4. So anyway, we at least have the 30 by 90 to contend with. Oops, wrong one. Grab the right the right view here. And I want to treat this now. Oh, and let's make that a little bit better. All right, so it changed my resolution on the big screen. And it has not been open for 20 minutes. I just saved, so I'm not want to worry about the warning there. All right, so instead of doing this in the sketch, again, we could set this as the sketch pattern, but my end game is to be able to drive this as easily as possible. Let's just say that these are the first in this group, but I may end up with what would be the next size. Let's say we go 240 by 240 by 30s with this pattern inside, and they're going to change it. I wanted to save these each time. I want to change these numbers as easily as possible, and that comes back to, in this case, I'm going to use a linear pattern with the feature, and direction 1 will be along that edge, and it is going to stay with 30. We have 45. Now that went the wrong way, so anywhere I want to reverse it, we're not going to really see negative numbers, but we're going to have these toggles to reverse the direction. And we have a total of 2 instances. No direction is set for direction 2. If I set it, there's still only 1, so it's not like it's doing anything. So, but there's 1 instance, and now I have the 2 holes. So we'll save that one again. And then immediately, because this is where I always get myself confused, is if I don't save it immediately, I somehow end up overwriting it. So then this one becomes the save as 30 by 90, and go ahead and open it. We're going to do save and tell it to close the original. All right, so now we're going to do the test. I go from 60 to 90, and if I do happen to remember to hit rebuild, it updates immediately. And then when I look at my pattern, I find the 2, and I tell it to go to 3 and rebuild. And that, since that was an instance count, and then we can save that. All right, so I'll see if I can do this without messing up my screens. All right, so the next one would be the pen. I'm going to save the pens to last because this is actually one of the easiest to do the configuration. The brackets are pretty straightforward. Oh, there it is, the 120, so that one they're calling a quad. I'm going to stay with my 30 by basically height and width dimensions. So that being the case, we're going to have 4 holes, and we'll jump back over here. And I saved this. I don't see the little asterisk, so I know I saved it. I want to do another save as, and this is going to be 30 by 120, and save as, copy and open. If I don't, the save as, it leaves it open. If there was any connection or any addressing back to an existing assembly, it'll usually warn you, but that's a future worry. We're not into that yet, but just be aware there are connections and associativity that will be coming up. 30, let's close this document, and we're going to do the same thing. And we're really laying out the logic here for the the configuration. If I go through this process, I do the first couple and I think about how this is going to go, it gives me the build. Now, on one of the other demos that I did, I turned the equations on. So if I go over to the document properties, let's see, where was that hiding? Nope, it probably was over here. Feature manager, that was what I was looking for. So I turned it to show the equations. Right now I don't necessarily have any equations, but if the equations are shown, let's take a real quick look at managing those equations, because I do have in this group global variables, sketch equations, all of the sketches. Now if I'd name these, and this kind of leads into why I'm going to do some naming, if I had named these would have been a little more descriptive, but I can tell just kind of looking at this that if I were to change that from 3 to 4, and then let's do an automatic rebuild and go ahead and hit OK, let my screen catch up. Now I have the same thing going on. All right, so this is where the functionality starts to come in. File, save as, and I'm going to do this one more time as the 120. I think there's also a 60 by 120. Make sure I'm doing a save as, copy, and open. All right, so there's the quad. Yeah, I thought there was one more. Let's look through some of these. Yeah, there's a 60 by 90. All right, so I missed that one somewhere. All right, so a little bit of noise going on that I overlooked one. So let's make sure it gets in there. Huh. All right, I'm not seeing it, but I know that there's going to be one, either that or, you know what, I bet it shows up in that that list with the last one, which is why we're definitely going to want to do the plate with the configuration. So maybe, yeah, let's take another look before I make a decision here. Second look. All right, so we made it up through the quad. We get to this one, and then there's the total number of holes. So 90 by 90, 60 by 90. All right, so this is the one that's really going to lend itself to the configuration, but I could also build the rest into this. So that being the case, I'm just gonna go ahead and cancel this, stop this one here, and say that I have all of these guys built, and the next video will kind of introduce the configurations with the pin, and then we'll look at these plates and build those with that additional functionality. Now keep in mind, I will say that if you want to build 8 different parts, I'm not saying not to, I'm just saying there's a better way. And doing this little bit of effort and building on that foundational material will get you a lot further faster.